Welcome back to Movies TV Mad and Wednesday's edition of the DCU Daily. My name is Mick and I'm here every single day here on Movies TV Mad, not only keeping you abreast of what's going on in DC film and DC television, but getting to the heart of the matter. Imagine going on the internet and bragging that a flop Superman movie has made more money than other flops like Blue Beetle, Aquaman 2, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, etc., 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 and movies like The Flash. Then imagine bragging that Superman made more money on its Monday than Spider-Man No Way Home and Deadpool and Wolverine. Movies at the same stage that had quadrupled Superman's total at the same stage. Imagine that kind of fucking cope. And imagine doing that with a straight face. Now today, we're going to be talking about what went wrong with this Superman movie. So stay tuned. But the cope and the stat padding is beyond me. Now there's no question that the domestic box office is kind of solid and better than a lot of CBMs, including most of the MCU Phase 4 CBMs, but it's still not good enough for a Superman movie. And let's be absolutely clear, as much as I love Man of Steel, its box office throughout its run wasn't good enough for a Superman movie. Its divisive nature stopped it from being a more successful movie than it was. The money it brought in wasn't good enough, but it's better than Superman. It's made more money at the same stage than Superman. Superman will struggle to get anywhere near Man of Steel's total of 670 million. At least 670 million is a solid figure, right? But even Man of Steel should have done better, and let's not get that twisted. So, what went wrong with Superman? Well, to discuss what went wrong with Superman, we have to discuss before this movie was even thought of. This all went wrong back during the inception of the beginning of the DCEU. From the moment they sacked David Goyer as the writer of a potential Man of Steel 2 and decided to insert Batman into a Man of Steel sequel. You know I love Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, and I wouldn't wish it away. I wouldn't wish it not to exist. But that was the mistake, firing the writers of The Dark Knight, one of the best, most celebrated comic book movies. This is the dumbest studio in Hollywood, no matter who runs them, no matter of the leadership. That's when things were going wrong. This is one of the things that went wrong with Superman. The treatment of Snyder. Because let's be clear here, if Snyder's allowed to finish his arc from the beginning, not now, from the beginning, and he's allowed, Goyer, Nolan and Snyder are allowed to do what they wanted to do with this Superman-led franchise, this DCEU, and Snyder's explained himself. When he was done, he was going to do a Flashpoint reboot so someone else could come in like Gunn and do whatever they wanted. But maybe people would have stumbled, like they say in the film, but then they would have joined Zack, Christopher Nolan and David Goyer under the sun, and there would have been more. People would have got what they were trying to do. But they became reactive. That was bad enough. Then there was the divisive nature of the conversations online. People exaggerating, being drama queens about these DCEU movies that are some of the finest movies in the comic book movie genre, and they were trashed because they weren't like the MCU. Why can't they be fun and light? Because that's what superhero movies should be. They should be dumb and goofy. I think there's a place in a superhero movie, in a comic book movie, for serious, stoic grittiness and realism, and also dumb, goofy humour. If you mixed it up, that could be very, very interesting. So I believe there's room for that, but not in the level of what Gunn's done with this Superman movie. Now, Gunn actually had a good outline, a good skeleton of a Superman story. I like the interview mostly. It's a little bit problematic in places between Lois Lane and Clark Kent or Superman. I like the debate they're having. I like the argument they're having. I like the fact that Superman goes to stop this Palestinian type of war. And by the way, there's certain people who support Israel who are very angry with James Gunn for doing this. But it's one of the things I say, well done, mate. You did well there. It's good. Superman wants to stop a war. People are going to die, he shouts at Lois. Some people not happy that he's shouting at Lois. Maybe that wasn't the right way to execute the scene. But I like that. I like what Superman's going through in this movie. I like the Superman story. But the problem is, Gunn, at the beginning of his script, seems quite interested in Superman. Quite interested to give him this interesting modern day arc. But very quickly, Gunn seems to become disinterested in continuing to tell his Superman story. So what he does is he inserts his Guardians of the Galaxy, Suicide Squad, Peacemaker type characters, and Superman gets left on the sidelines. Lois Lane gets a better three-dimensional development arc in the movie. Lois Lane is quite well done in this movie, if you ask me. And that's right. But the problem is you can't do Lois Lane so well and leave Superman on the sidelines. Another problem with this movie, of course, it's not an origin story, but its explainer is problematic. Then Gunn does this. Spoiler alert ahead. Do us proud, our beloved son. Rule with mercy. Jorel. So that's interesting. So a lot of people have come out and attacked this, but he says, do us proud, our beloved son. Rule without mercy. Did I say rule with mercy? Anyway, I can't remember now, but basically he says, rule without mercy. Now this is very interesting. As I said before, in Smallville in Series 2, when Clark first meets Jorel, he tells him he was sent to Earth to conquer it. It blows Clark's mind. And Clark, rebels against Jor-El's wishes. The whole point of Jor-El is that he's trying to test his son. These are trials. And the idea is that he wants Clark to say, no, I won't do this. It's a test. But this is something different. Anyway, we go on. Dispatch of anyone unable or unwilling to serve you, Kal-El. Take as many wives as you can, so your genes and Krypton's might and legacy will live on in this new frontier. Lara. So again, this doesn't really make any sense. This is very, very anti-Superman and very anti-Jorel and Lara, as we've seen them before. And finally, the people there are simple and profoundly confused. Now this is Gunn just baiting people, basically. He's having a go at Americans, basically. Weak of mind, spirit and body. Lord over the planet as the last son of Krypton, Jor-El. So ultimately, this is very, very problematic and a lot of people are very upset. But this is the line, right? I'll reread the line because this is the really problematic one. So it's dispatch of anyone unable or unwilling to serve you, Kal-El. Take as many wives as you can, so your genes and Krypton's might and legacy will live on. Well, in America, you can't take as many wives as you want, hun. So, I don't get it. Did you do your research? I mean, all the other Jor-Els and Laras did their research about the place they were sending their son to. And Krypton's might and legacy will live on in this new frontier. So, this is an odd way to depict Jorel and Lara. Let me explain to you what actually happened, because some shills are celebrating this, calling this, cannon breaking and brave. No, Smallville did a lot of cannon breaks that were brave and bold and worked for that pre-Superman story. This is bullshit. Gunn did this because he was sulking like a child. I can assure you that he didn't even want a Jorel and Lara in this film. Because if you remember rightly, we were doing videos and we were saying, where's Jorel and Lara? Why haven't Jorel and Lara been cast? Because Gunn never wanted a Jorel and Lara. And I believe it was people like Safran, Zaslav, and the studio, and even the comic book writers and artists he's been aligning with, and, asking them to look at his story, to help him out, because his knowledge of Superman isn't great. I believe he didn't want a Jorel and Lara, and he was forced to have a Jorel and Lara in this movie. So, like a screaming child who's not used to being told what to do, like a spoiled brat, he goes, I'll show you, I'm gonna do this. He never wanted a Jorel and Lara in this movie. And this, my friends, is fucking terrible. Fucking terrible at the end of the day. I mean, every previous Jorel and Lara I've loved. We had Marlon Brando and Susanna York. Now, Marlon Brando gets most of the speeches and monologues because he was being paid record-breaking money in Superman 78 at the time. Now, Susanna York went up to screenwriter Tom Mankiewicz, who wrote a great rewritten screenplay, and she complained to him, why has Marlon got all these monologues and I'm barely saying anything? Why hasn't the mother got anything to say? And Tom replied, look, when you're getting paid what he's getting paid, you can have all the monologues. It's a shame. Now, I love all the other Jorel and Laras as well. I think Smallville did a great job with Jorel, and then they introduced Helen Slater as Lara. That was brilliant as well. Superman Returns just used Brando again. They recycled his speech because it's a continuation of Superman 2. Superman and Lois did a pretty good job with Jorel and Lara as well, but they're an inspiration to Kal-El. Now, they're not the reason he becomes a good person. He becomes a great person because of the Kents, because he grows up with the mentality of a human being. But Gunn has got the idea of Superman upside down, the idea of cutting out the super and just making him a man and claiming he's an ordinary human being. No, he's not, as I said yesterday. Physically, he basically, as I said yesterday, and as I said on Twitter yesterday, go read what I wrote, right? It's a bit like me being Greek Cypriot, Anglo-Greek Cypriot. I have Greek Cypriot DNA, but I was raised as a British kid, a UK kid. I was born and bred in the UK, so I think like an Englishman. But my DNA is Greek Cypriot. But I feel like an Englishman because even though I live here in Cyprus, I was raised mostly in the UK and for a few years in LA, America. So that's my mentality. And the same with Superman. His mentality is human. But Gunn has got the whole idea of Superman upside down. And what they do is they imprint their own agendas and mindsets and mentalities on these films. One of the problems today is the egotistical nature of creatives. I was having a cigarette on my kitchen patio yesterday. I was thinking, James Gunn is a one-trick pony. And I thought, Mick, that's not fair. Because I thought about Nolan and Villeneuve and Reeves. They're all one-trick ponies. The only difference is Nolan, Villeneuve and Reeves are better directors and better storytellers, and they have more depth in their stories. But most directors today are one-trick ponies, right? They do the same thing. When you think of something like someone like Steven Spielberg, for example, his movies are different. Jaws is shot differently to E.T. There's not really a signature move directorially from Steven Spielberg. But when you think about modern day directors, they're very, very samey. So a lot of things went wrong. Now, if we go back before Superman was a thing, they fired Henry Cavill in the role. This is one of the major things that went wrong. Their schoolboy error was they lied that Cavill was coming back to try and uplift the box office of Black Adam. It was a lie, it was never going to happen, and you have to ask the question, did Cavill know this when he was saying he was coming back? It all seemed at the time too good to be true. We couldn't believe our luck. But the problem is, our beloved Snyder fans even had issues with that because they wanted Snyder back. They didn't want the spit curl. They didn't want the brighter costume. They didn't want the hopeful Superman. By the way, Henry Cavill demanded, he wanted, if he was to come back. He always wanted to do the hopeful Superman. But the thing is, Henry Cavill was a huge supporter of how his Superman was depicted in Man of Steel. He wasn't so happy with how his Superman was depicted in Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. That's the problems and issues that Cavill had. And as much as a lot of us love BVS, the way Superman was depicted in that movie maybe went a little bit too far, if you ask me. And I love BVS, but a lot of issues that kicked off that hurt the Snyderverse come from Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice. That film should have been a direct sequel to Man of Steel 2. That should have been a direct sequel to Man of Steel, and that should have been a solo Superman movie, Man of Steel 2, if you ask me. So the problems for this Superman movie began a long time before this Superman movie even began. But then when you look at this movie, you know, the reason Zaslav wanted a Superman movie to kick off the DCU, he wanted to say, we're going back to the Donner era. We're going back to the golden age of Warner Brothers, and we're going to give you a majestic, wonderful Superman movie that's very traditional. And they did not do this. It's not James Gunn's fault that he's James Gunn. He only has one way of telling stories. That's not his fault. I was hoping he would step outside from himself and make a majestic, amazing movie. After all, he's been to film school. He knows where to point the character. He knows where to point the camera, should I say. So it's not like he can't direct the movie, but he was unwilling to step outside of himself. And this is one of the core problems with this Superman movie. They cut this movie to shreds, right? They limited it to 2 hours. So they've got all these storylines, all these things going on, and it's limited to 2 hours. It's no damn good. Like Superman Returns, this movie doesn't know what it wants to be. Is it a Superman and his amazing friends movie? Is it a Superman movie? Is it a Superman and Lois movie? What's amazing is the pilot episode of Superman and Lois is a better Superman movie than James Gunn's Superman. And if you haven't seen that pilot, Todd Helbing, I mean, brilliant. Greg Berlanti, Todd Helbing, and everyone who was involved in that pilot, round of applause. That is a fucking Superman movie. That's more of a Superman movie and how you depict Superman than James Gunn did. And what's amazing about that Superman and Lois pilot is that it's different. Superman's, you know, he's done all the things that he's done that we've seen in other movies and read in the comics. He's settled down with Lois. He's got 2 boys, and they're a challenge to him. That's his challenge, you see. This is where Gunn got it wrong. He thought by having Superman beaten and battered all over the place for 120 minutes, that's the way to make him relatable, by making him look weak. Every good Superman comic, every good Superman TV show gives Superman emotional challenges, and that's exactly where Superman and Lois' success lies, and where the Smallville pre-Superman story success lies. The challenges for Clark and Superman in Superman and Lois is balancing his life with his wife Lois Lane and his sons. He's got one son, I think it's Jordan, isn't it? He's suffered with depression. He sees, Jonathan, who's he's an all-beater, he's an achiever, he loves his brother, but he doesn't feel good enough. That's like me. I never felt good enough compared to my brother, who was 11 months younger than me, when I was growing up, and my parents didn't help the situation by saying, why can't you be more like him? Now, they're not doing that, you know, they're fair parents. So Superman has these emotional challenges in Smallville. Clark has this kind of Peter Parker vibe, right? He's in love with the most beautiful girl in the school, and he can't have her. He's keeping this secret. He's got all these things to balance. It's relatable. That's how you make any character relatable. What you don't do is have the shit kicked out of someone with the name Superman for 120 fucking minutes. And anyone defending this doesn't understand who Superman actually is. So this movie is a mixture, as I said at the very first reaction I made on this very channel. This Superman is a mixture of the good, bad, and the ugly. It's a very, very inconsistent film. And there lies the problem. But in terms of the box office, there are deep questions and really lessons to be learnt here. Because we have to start to realise something. That maybe the audience are telling us something, as I've already said. Do they want Superman? Do they want a Superman film? Would they rather a Superman TV series, considering Superman television shows in the past 30 years or so have been more successful than 3 Superman movies in the past 25 years? And it's not always about seeing what money something makes. It's clear that people embraced Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman, embraced Smallville, embraced Lois and Clark, right? Or should I say Superman and Lois, right? They embraced those shows. Those 4 shows were embraced more as adaptations of Superman than Superman Returns, of Man of Steel, and of James Gunn's Superman. All 3 of those movies had a divided opinion. But opinions weren't divided on Lois and Clark, the New Adventures of Superman, of Smallville, of Superman and Lois. People embraced those versions because the adaptations were damn fucking good and very, very inventive. As I say, I love Man of Steel. I can understand why it's a divided opinion on that film and on BVS. I get that, but I happen to like what Snyder actually did. So these are the questions we have to ask. Is there room for a Superman movie that can make big money that everyone can unite and enjoy? Yes, I believe if you do the right things with Superman, you can make money with a Superman movie. But you have to do the right things. He has to be majestic. He has to be a hero. He has to be pure. And I'm sorry to people who don't want to hear this. We've had Superman killing. I'm fine with that. But that can't happen in a Superman film again. What was called for here was an easy, simple Superman movie. I think the guy whose audio we were listening to yesterday, I forgot his name, already said it simple. We want Superman and Lois, Clark and Lois to flirt. We want the romance. We want Superman to fight evil. We want a simple Superman story. The problem today, these creatives try and overcomplicate these iconic characters. Superman isn't complicated. He isn't dark. He isn't brooding. Stop trying to do that. But what Gunn did here is what many male feminists in LA and Hollywood are trying to do to iconic straight white male characters. And it's trying to mock them. He mocks Superman in this movie. He has Superman kicked in the bollocks, right? These are not things we should be seeing. But one of Gunn's major crimes in this movie is the typical MCU formula of having great dramatic beats and undercutting them with comedy. There's a great moment near the end of this movie where Superman makes a speech, right, about how he's scared and he tries to do the best that he can. And then Lex Luthor says to him, this government, the United States government, want me to kill you. It's a great moment. It's a great fucking exchange. Instead of continuing that, seeing these 2 great men, you know, going off at each other verbally, It's great. There's nothing better than sometimes a verbal jousting is better than a physical jousting, because Lex and Superman having a physical fight isn't much fun, because you've got two men of great intellect, and Superman's got great physical strength, and Lex Luthor's got a great mind. To have them jousting against each other verbally, like you would see from Doc 2 with the Doctor and the Master, is something wonderful when the dialogue's good. And I must say, the dialogue, the exchange, is really, really good. What does Gunn do? He's obsessed with that fucking CGI dog, and he has that CGI dog beating the shit out of Lex Luthor after that moment. You cannot do that. It kind of works with Loki in Avengers. It kind of works because, like, Loki and Tony Stark don't have any personal history, right? It's not like Lex Luthor and Superman. And it is kind of fun to see what Hulk does, because it's Hulk. You want Hulk to interact with his bestiality and his strength, and that's fine. But here, it simply doesn't work. And Gunn does it again and again and again in this movie. There are many things to say, I like that in this movie. But there's even more things to say, that this isn't good and that isn't good. And as I said when I reacted to this movie first off a few weeks back, the biggest problem in this film is Superman. Because Gunn doesn't get this character. He doesn't want to get this character. He's not interested in this character. He never was. Gunn told us he didn't really want to direct this movie, and they forced him into it. And when you force someone like Gunn to do something like introduce Jorel and Lara, that's where the problems begin. But anyone trying this creative accounting with the box office is going to lose. It doesn't matter that this box office is slightly stronger domestically. Of course, they're not talking about the international box office, which is fucking weak. They're going to keep on giving you these stat pads, this creative accounting. And let me make you a prediction about the second weekend. They're going to start stat padding that the drop-off for Superman is less than it was for Man of Steel. Again, it doesn't matter, because Man of Steel is still beating this movie financially at the same stage. Man of Steel will finish up with a bigger box office than Superman by the time Superman finishes that run. A total box office, in the end of the day, is all that matters.